How do you do that?
Go down to reactions. Put your cursor on reactions and you'll see a thumbs up or a hand clap.
I know.
Okay. And then you just click on that and then it'll disappear over time. You don't even have to undo it.
Can anybody hear me? This is Betty.
Yeah, I can hear you, Betty.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Betty, you are in the dark, if it makes any difference. You're, whatever room you're in, there's backlight, but not on.
I had a meeting with Kathy yesterday, and she got me almost squared away.
Okay, you all are recording, so watch what you say now, going forward.
And I just, before Kathy steps away, I just want to say a huge thank you to Kathy and to Carolyn Cooley as well. But the two of them have just been outstanding in providing technical assistance to get these Zoom calls going. And they're both real knowledgeable about it. And it's just, to me, it's just made the whole thing doable. And so a huge thank you.
You're certainly welcome. I'll pass that along to Carolyn. You're a pretty easy group, so have a good meeting.
Did you all get the attachments that were sent out with the agenda and stuff? So hopefully we can kind of walk from that. And as you see, it's a tight agenda because we only are going to do 3 hours today with a break. Yeah, there's the agenda right there. And so we're gonna be moving along quickly, but I think we can do it. Does anybody have any questions on the agenda? All right.
Yeah, actually, one question that I brought up in an email last night. Nowhere on the agenda does it talk about taking positions on ballot issues. Is that something we want to try to get done today, or do we want to do that in a separate meeting?
Let's see if we have time. I'd love to work that in if we have time, Betty.
Okay.
So Betty, can you hold that as a parking lot issue to bring back up when we have time?
Yes, I will.
Perfect, thank you. So with that, let's jump into Betty's report on Lobby Corps.
Okay, the Lobby Corps report is really pretty simple. Basically, all of the bills that we opposed this session, the ones that were anti-women's reproductive health, were all killed in committee. And let's see, among the very few bills that actually made it through because of the time that we supported were a couple of education bills, one the college credit for work experience, and the bill that disallowed doctors from using their own sperm. The race trait hairstyle anti-discrimination bill, and supports for early childhood educator workforce. Let's see, not too many more. Senator Zenziger's bill to expand adult education, and an annual cost of living adjustment to the basic cash assistance Colorado Works program recipient, which is marvelous because, you know, that grant has always been lower than it should be. And now they don't have to keep coming back year after year. Senator Danielson's bill on information on apprenticeships, a directory for every high school, passed. The prohibition on civil arrest at a courthouse passed. And lastly, the bill that we supported at the very end, the Enhanced Law Enforcement Integrity Bill, passed and was signed. So many bills just got kind of lost in the hopper right when they finally got back after the break. It was kind of a wholesale bill in virtually every committee, and they killed almost everything that was on their docket. So it was a weird session, but if nothing else, that the enhanced law enforcement bill, I think, is the one that's going to have the greatest long-term effect on our life period. And I was glad to see that pass. And that's,
Any
I
questions
think, real.
for Betty?
I have a question. Is that summary going to be on the web or, I mean, on our website or anything?
I can learn to understand you much better if I can get familiar.
Yeah, my problem is I'm still having computer issues. My problem now is with Word and trying to send electronically. What I might have to do is, can I fax to Deb or let's see, who do I fax it to? Joan? Do you have fax capability?
No, but I have email.
I know, but my
The only
problem
reason
is
I
getting.
ask is because I just put that stuff in our newsletter for our members, and probably other branch public policy people do the same thing.
Right. I would like to get it on there, and I will try and work with again with my computer. I've gotten worse and worse and deeper into the hole. So I will see what I can do about making it possible and getting it on the web in the right form. Okay.
If Betty, or if somehow we got it to whoever is doing the state website, could we put it there? That would be the most logical place to put it, on the state website, I think.
Well, and that would be
Yeah, that's
Carolyn Cooley. And Betty, you know, Carolyn's really good. If you send her stuff and it's not in the greatest format, she's been really good about, you know, setting it up to go onto the website. So if you could just straight email it to her, not in a document, because I know I've had those same issues with my computer. So just email it to her, and then she can usually get it set up in the form that it can go on the website.
okay. I'll do that.
And I will send an email to Carolyn giving her a heads up that it is on its way.
And you know,
Okay.
it really should go to Carolyn and Kathy Hall because they're sharing that responsibility. And I would send it to both of them.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Will do.
Super. All right. Anything else on Lobby Corp, Betty? That's kind of an interesting session, I know, from watching from afar.
Just in terms of looking ahead, I said I would continue this year, but I'd sure like, it would be nice if some other people would kind of gather around and help with the observing and be thinking about taking it over next year.
So I think that's a really good heads up that Betty is giving us, and I think we need to, not right now, but I do think we need to think about what that means and then think about options. Paula, did I see your hand up?
Betty, I have a question that I just saw an article that Dolly Parton congratulated Governor Polis because they're talking about bringing in the Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. Is that and I know there's certain people bringing that. Do you know much about that?
I really don't. I saw the same article, but I don't know anything about it.
Well, I'm just going to say, put out a plug. I brought the Dolly Parton Imagination Library to Colorado Springs years ago, and we ended up serving 10,000 children between the ages of birth and age 5. And what is being proposed now is that the state would take up half the costs if the local group, the local city, or however they want to do it, would supply the other half. And it costs $30 for each child. So I think it's something we as a public policy group and AAUW should be very supportive of if we can look at that and keep abreast to that one, Betty.
Okay. That would be a good piece of information to get on the website too.
There is that article. Maybe I could forward that to them, and
Okay.
we can talk about it. It talks about the people who are doing it, but it's talk about literacy for children and bringing it into the homes. It's just a fabulous program.
And
That sounds great.
there are 3 or 4 other programs across the state that do, they all work together. It's really interesting about those early childhood literacy programs and the fact that they don't become competitive, but they're very cooperative. And so there's several programs of parent education program that are coordinated through Parent Possible nonprofit. And then there's Reach Out and Read. I have been over the years involved with both of those, and so I know how they work. So it really opens a lot of coordination with those organizations. Okay.
Oh, just
Moving
one more
on.
question for
Yeah,
Betty.
go ahead.
Would it be helpful for us like we did before? Is that helpful for you if we each take a section, like I took pay, I think, and monitored that? Was that
Oh.
helpful? Would you like us to do that again?
So you're in the weight room?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Okay, go back.
I'm willing to do it. I'm sure others are
Kathy is
too.
not paying attention. So, and she's the one that has, I think, let you in. I'll give her a heads up. Yeah.
Somebody's talking.
Georgina has a question.
Georgina, you're muted.
I've lost my picture. I've just got Zoom in the middle of it and a few people on the side.
Yeah,
That's what I have too, Georgina.
that's what I have also.
Yay.
And
Okay.
that's because, it's most likely because Deb Carchetta has her screen share up so you can see some things. And so she'll play with that. But Kathy,
That's
are you
better.
there?
Thank you.
I
Yeah,
need to,
that's better.
There
Kathy,
is
are
a
you
box
there?
up at the
Can you
top
hear
that
me?
if you click on, you can see half.
Oh, now she is in. Okay, so we got you in too.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
So how far have you gotten?
We had the Lobby Corps report and Betty was just telling us that not much happened, but those that we were against all hit the floor and there was a trash can, so.
They bit the dust.
Yeah.
They died a cruel death.
Right.
Joan, did you have something that you wanted to talk to us about with voter ed and where you are at on doing that?
So this year we put the Facebook ads up and I think they were fairly successful. I don't have the stats. I don't know if Debbie has them. I don't know if Debbie has the stats right now, but we can get them to you and I can actually look them up too. But I think they were fairly successful. Something happened on the last one and Debbie can probably tell us if it ever got approved or not. There was some fiasco that they were reviewing it and I don't know if it ever went on. Did it go on, Debbie?
No, it did not. But it still was distributed without paid support, so we still did get some reach out of it. The biggest issue is that they keep deciding that we might be political hackers, and I always have to send in my license and prove who I am and all this kind of stuff. So that's what's going on there.
Okay, so we'll keep working on that. I went
Yep.
to a webinar and they suggested we go to Twitter and Instagram. Debbie and I have talked about that, and so we'll see if we want to pursue any of those. Instagram, maybe not, but we'll see if we want to pursue any of those for the fall because that's going to be a big one. And then the next major item is for the fall leadership conference. We really need to get information out on voter guidelines, particularly on the partisan, not taking partisan stances. So Gail, I can work with you and Sue on how best to do that information. I thought we could have some simple handouts, more like a PowerPoint form for people to look at, as well as you guys could go over it, and then send them more detailed information to the presidents and the public policy people. So if that sounds agreeable to you, I'll kind of work on that to have it ready for the fall leadership conference.
I think that's a
How
great
much
idea.
time, how much time would you need? Because I'm doing all that final planning.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, Paula. It would be up to you. It would be during their report, the public policy report. You know, they can just briefly go over it. I think to say the guidelines might take 2 or 3 minutes at the most. You know, all we're really doing is just saying not to participate in partisan activities as well as partisan groups. But we
Okay.
do want them to do things like get the vote out and go ahead and have, you know, forums about the ballot issues or whatever. So maybe 2 or 3 minutes during the public policy report. Would that work?
Yes, it's going to be a very different fall leadership conference. Gail, if you can allow me just 1 minute to just talk that it is going to be a webinar, and we will have a keynote speaker, and then we are going to have a speaker from national in regard to mission, and I can talk about that a little bit more. And then we're having a membership presentation from Colorado Springs because the branch is so large and a lot of people want to see how that all works. So those are the 3 factors. If you were on the regional conference, it'd be very similar to that approach with as we did with the regional conference. It will be just that Saturday, 9 until 12:30. And I know Gail and I have been back and forth a little bit about topic, and I want to I'll address that whenever Gail wants me to, but I just want to tell you that that's the format. So what I need to work in is there are not going to be formal reports from each of the groups. That's just not going to be happening. We'll have our executive committee meeting in August and our board meeting in August. And then the webinar will simply be those 3 sections. And I do want to, however, put in a report from public policy. I think that's very, very important, especially this year. And so, you know, let me think about how that works and the timing, and I can get back to whomever. Gail, would you be the one who would be doing that?
Yeah, well, Sue and I will be sharing it.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So on all these lines, I'm thinking of what we need to do is, because of timing, and Betty, you brought up the ballot issues, and that some of them might be ones that we want to endorse, or at least we want to talk if we do want to endorse something, and we would want to have that done prior to fall leadership, because we would, if we were going to support something, we would want to get that out at fall leadership. So Betty, we have to make sure that we do address that issue before fall leadership. So again, keep that issue out there for us to make sure we get to address it.
Okay.
Right. I had that same thought.
Yeah. Last thing for my report is I saw this in AARP, who turns out to vote. Colorado by state is probably at 61.4%. We are the 4th, tied for 3rd largest number of voters people who participate in the votes. So so we can be very proud of ourselves. So Washington is also, Oregon is actually up there with us, and Minnesota and Wisconsin, and one other state.
Interesting.
I can't see which one it is. Okay, thank you.
Probably mail ballots.
Yes.
I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Joan or comments about voter ed? Moving on to budgetary. The points that are listed here, the organizations that we have financially supported in the past are noted here. Is there any discussion as to whether we add anybody, we drop anybody, for change anything? We do have this money available in the budget because as we're working forward, the budget was presented prior to our meeting, and so we did put in a line item in the budget for these values.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, the Women's Collaborative, I don't know what's happening with that, or who's been attending or being a liaison to that. The other thing that we dropped the ball on was the Women's Legislative Breakfast this year, and it was, oh golly, I think it was scheduled right around the time things were starting to close up. So that would be my only question. I agree we should continue to support, in effect, support the lobby day, public policy day efforts with the Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Coalition. And I would love to see us really officially get into that. And I'll see if that's would be possible this year. Women's lobby is a very good place for us to be.
Right.
And again, question about the Women's Collaborative.
Right before this meeting, I received a call from Stormy in regard to Women's Collaborative, because I guess, Gail, you had asked her about that, and I guess Stormy had attended a couple of those meetings.
Yes.
And it was suggested that maybe we would look at Boulder, at the Women's Boulders Women's Collaborative. Does anyone know about that? They said that was a very active group and that maybe that is one that we would prefer to support over the Women's Collaborative.
I guess in light of the article Paula sent out last night, which I also had read in the morning, I wonder if we need to find a group that includes more women of color. I know the Reproductive Rights and Justice group does. Just a thought.
Going back to the Boulder situation, I believe Mary Hassler went to those groups, and I know she talked about how good they were, or to their meetings.
Somebody else who might know would be Betty Flayton, because she's a pretty active in the Boulder branch right now. I should have asked her.
So maybe it would be best if before we write a check to Women's Collaborative, that we touch base with Mary or Betty and see what they say, if they think that they might be more appropriate for our financial support there than the Women's Collaborative. Betty, what is your thought on that?
Yeah, I think that would be fine. I'm not sure. I think the Women's Collaborative that we have supported in the past is statewide, as opposed to being Boulder centric, but I don't know that for sure. Years ago, I went to a couple of their functions, and well, naturally, usually things are metro-centric when you go to events, but I can't remember how statewide that was.
Well, that would be the one issue I think we need to be careful of, that we don't end up with total metro-centric as opposed to a statewide involvement.
And Gail, I would check with Betty Flayton if you're questioning about the Boulder one instead of Mary, because Mary's down in Florida and has been for a while. So
That's
Betty
true.
would be up on what's going on.
I would
And let
like
me
to
also-
make sure that I'm so sorry. I would like to make sure that all of these groups are still nonpartisan before we give them money, because it's an election year and it's kind of easy for some of these groups to sort of swing one way or the other.
Valid point.
Okay.
Well, I would say that that's the Color Reproductive Health Rights and Justice Coalition. You left out health, but that and the Women's Lobby are, they are nonpartisan or not partisan. But the reality is, so many of the issues and the positions that we take start making it look like we're partisan. So that's
It's a fine line.
It is.
I think the difference in that is if we are doing issues, not candidates.
right.
Well, without a doubt. Yeah, we definitely don't want to go with a candidate.
Right.
And we never have, at least in my history.
No. No, the problem may be that the groups endorse candidates.
Right.
Those two that I just talked about do not.
Good.
So Betty,
Some of their members do,
Right.
but the coalition don't.
That's right.
Betty, what's going to happen with the legislative breakfast? I mean, how does that, is there an entity that coordinates that? I know it's just something it's a 7 o'clock in the morning body meeting downtown at the Capitol, which is kind of like brain damage for any of us.
It is. It's a breakfast, and it usually includes a keynoter and a panel of women, well, not always women, a panel of legislators. I don't know what happened this year, but it's been helpful. It's just awfully early to get there. It's a wide coalition of women's groups that are sponsors of it, and there is a steering committee. There's a website for the Colorado Women's Legislative Breakfast. And I've not looked at it for a while, but there's a steering committee that puts that day together, and that's the main function of that group.
Do you think they may go virtual next year?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. And Betty, I mean, I remember when that was going on, for some reason, we didn't get contacted and didn't receive our tickets. And then all of a sudden, I was out of the country when that happened, and then everything was falling apart. So,
Yeah, I've gone for years, but I didn't go this year. I was just looking at my calendar. I don't think I even had it on my calendar.
yeah, for some reason, we didn't get the tickets, Lindy, and like I said, I left the country, and so it just fell through the cracks this year. But it is hard to get people there, and a lot of times the president goes, but that's going to be hard this year for Paula because she's down in Colorado Springs, and so I mean that entails going up to Denver and staying the night. There's no way you can get there.
Let me say something for a minute. I think that we need to get realistic here. Probably still then we're going to be in the midst of this COVID thing, plus the flu, the seasonal flu. Probably nothing is going to be happening. We might not even have the legislature in session. Mm-hmm. We have to consider that possibility.
Yeah.
So can we move on?
The next thing to do is to do a little research from their website or whatever, and see what they're thinking and what they're hoping to do. And then, Betty, would it be expected that we would put a financial backing to that?
Yeah, that was, as I recall, it was $100, and with that $100, you got a table for a display. You got to put a piece of literature in the packet and 2 breakfasts. I believe it was 100.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it
you're
was,
right,
Betty. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, does someone want to take on the job of doing a little bit of research on that and figuring out where they're at and what's going on, and then report back to us?
I'd be
Okay.
willing to do that. I can do that from home.
Okay, super, Lindy, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else about our financial support or involvement with other coalitions?
Well, I'd like us to kind of pick up on, I can't remember who suggested it, that maybe we should look at some type of equality, some type of group that might be working in the state or in some of the metropolitan area.
I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. Does somebody want to try to untangle? I mean, that sounds like a Gordian knot, personally.
I mean, I think right off of NAACP, I know Colorado Springs has at least one person who's a member of that group in the Springs. I don't know if there's, I assume there's a state group, whatever. Just a suggestion, Gal. We don't need to do it.
I'm not saying it's not a good suggestion. I'm just saying it kind of overwhelms me. Does somebody think that they are willing to try to figure this one out?
There's also a group called Together Colorado, and I believe that they overlap into the racially inclusive kinds of issues.
Well, maybe that's a place to start.
My church,
What are they called?
my church is
Together,
having a meeting with them this week, I
Together
think.
Colorado. Together Colorado.
Together Colorado, yep.
Yeah. I can, I know my pastor is involved in that. Let me chat with her and get back to you.
Can I ask all of you a favor? I know all of your voices, but because I cannot get a full retinue of pictures on my right-hand side, can you kindly identify yourself when you talk?
Diane, when somebody talks, doesn't their picture show up for you? Because that's what's happening.
Well, like Betty's just didn't show up at all.
Oh, okay.
Up at the top of your screen, there is a box that has little dots in it, 9 dots.
The grid photo.
And if you click on that, you will get half of the group. And then at the bottom, there's an arrow so you can.
Yeah, I was getting it all on the side.
Yeah, but this way, it's a small box with 6 different people.
I got it right now. Thank you.
And I don't know if you'll still be able to get mine. This is Betty, because my voice is coming through the phone. Something is still not right with my connection.
Well, I have your picture just fine, Betty.
Yeah, I do too. I can see you just fine, Betty.
Yeah, I can see you.
Mm-hmm. Can I just be a bit of a devil's advocate here? I really appreciated receiving that article from Paula, and I read through it last night. Looking into perhaps talking or discussing about more involvement with groups of color, organizations of women of color, that type of thing, is not going to solve the problem.
No.
It's not even begins to touch the problem.
Right.
We have a much bigger problem in AAUW. It's been around for a long time. And I think that this is something that requires a full out conference concerning this, about where we are as an organization. Now, if we decide that for Public Policy Day, we want to invite some of these organizations, these women of color, that's fine. but just getting involved with him is not going to solve the problem.
No.
I agree with Sue because it's kind of a situation of saying, here we are. You know, what can you do for us almost is what it's going to look like. They need to invite us in.
No. Well, never mind.
No, I think this is a discussion that we have to have. And before we get too deep into it, I want to ask Paula because Paula has the lovely opportunity to be the president of AUW going forward. And I think that is, to me, that's leadership as to, how deeply does she want to get into it? Is it too quickly? Is it, so Paula, I'm just going to throw the mic to you.
I appreciate it being thrown to me because it's definitely been a topic on my mind with everything going on, as with all of us. And then when that article came out, even though AAUW isn't referred to and talked about a whole lot in comparison in the article, there's still that problem. There's still that situation. And before we even met, or I've talked with Gail, I have focused my fall leadership on touching on some of this. And Gail, is it okay for me to tell what this is so we can go on with the discussion?
The mic is yours.
All right, thank you. And I have gotten Dr. Dina Samuels.
Oh, you got her.
Yes, I did. I'm sending a note out after this meeting. But, and she was a professor at UCCS for 20 years and now has her own consulting firm. And I wanted to share just this little bit about what she does. The Fall Leadership Conference is going to be trying to just do a first step on looking at ourselves and being mindful of how we approach the situations and different people and whatever. So she is going to be talking about mindful, inclusive leadership. And so that will be 1 hour of our first, of the first part of it. And so I'm just going to read this from her little blurb on her website. Inspiring people to raise their personal and social awareness to live more fulfilling, connected, and meaningful lives. And assisting organizations and campuses or corporations in building more diverse, equitable, and inclusive cultures. And so she is a possibility, depending on how we all like this presentation, that she could follow up with us in February. And, it could be something that it could be a step. But my whole thought was that let's just plant that seed. Let's just plant that seed at Fall Leadership. It's going to be different. I mean, we already know being on Zoom and doing a webinar and all of this is different. And so instead of saying, here are the 8 factors of leadership or whatever, we're going to go this way with it. And executive committee met on Tuesday and all voted to have her be included in this presentation. So to your question, I am very much in favor of taking this however we think we can take it. I think it's ironic, and I just came to this conclusion this morning after Gail, I read your email. I'm sorry I didn't see it until this morning. That we have proposed for Aurora to be our spring, our convention destination. Now, I think that's a little ironic that we might be able to use some really special speakers in regard to the shooting there also. So I mean, I think it can all be pulled together. I think, so my belief is that we do as much as all of us feel comfortable with, but on that edge of taking it maybe a step further than what we might be really comfortable with. And that's kind of my approach to the year.
This is Betty. Yeah, this is Betty. I think that sounds marvelous. And the other resource person that comes back to me is Dr. Nita Tyler, who was our keynoter in 2019 at Public Policy Day. And that is the work that she does as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. She has been brought up.
And she, incidentally, she's on Channel 9 doing a lot of the inclusivity spots these days.
Right. Well, she won that Channel 9 award. And, right.
Yep.
She was one of the main speakers on TED Talks last year.
Well, Georgina made a comment earlier that I think is extremely relevant as we move forward in trying to figure out Public Policy Day. And that is, are we even going to have a physical presence for Public Policy Day? Or is it going to be a webinar, electronic kind of thing? Depending upon how we hold the meeting is in some ways going to depend upon how we structure the top content of the meeting. My personal feeling is I see no way that we're going to end up with an in-person meeting. I think that to me it's 90-some%. It's going to have to be electronic. Might be able to have a room at the hotel if 30 people wanted to go over and sit in groups of 10 and try to be physically together. But I just do not see having a room with 100 and some people sitting in it personally.
Yeah, this is Stacy. Based on what I'm seeing in my profession, I would agree with that. All of the conferences for my continuing education, since the spring on have been canceled and none have been rescheduled. Everything is just being done piecemeal online, throughout the rest of this year into next year. Nothing has been scheduled in terms of the conference, for optometrists. So I think that's what people are kind of facing, is the in-person meetings aren't going to happen for a while.
Well, and Gail made this call. She and I had an email way back in fairly early March, and I wasn't there yet at all, but Gail was. She already was getting it, that to bring 150 plus people of our age group together just probably is not going to be able to happen. And even if by February, it's sort of maybe getting better and, but still that means we have to start now to get this going for in person and do contracts with hotels and all of that. And I really don't think we want to get into that. I think it's just, we need to put our energy into something that we know we can pull off, rather than be worrying about it constantly about whether this is going to have to all change. And I wish that wasn't so. It's breaking my heart, but that's my feeling.
The uncertainty would be very stressful.
Very.
Mm-hmm. And I think you probably are all aware of the fact that National's stand on this is due to liability. No one should be meeting in person at least through the end of the year. Mm-hmm. And the beginning of February isn't too far behind that.
And nothing's gone our way on this since day one. So.
Okay, so before we spend too much more time discussing this, I would simply like to take a vote. So if you can just go down in the bottom of your screen and where's the yes, no vote down there? I don't see it.
I don't have it.
All right, so let's just go to reactions. If you are for making a decision that says blanket, yes, we're going to go electronically, just give us a thumbs up. And if you don't want to make that decision, just don't do anything. So we'll just count the thumbs up as yes, and the no comments is nothing. So down the bottom of your screen is the yellow thumbs up.
I can't find mine.
I don't have that.
I
don't either.
Under reactions, you don't have
I vote
anything?
yes.
I don't have any
Under
way to
reaction?
respond.
Oh, I see it. I got it. Okay.
I don't.
I'm
Look
on my
under
screen.
reactions, Georgina. Go to your right.
I don't have any reactions on my right. I
You
don't
don't?
have anything
Okay.
there. It's
Okay.
just gone.
All right, so we can't, so I guess we have to go to a verbal vote. So let's just redo this. We'll do a verbal vote. Is there
Can we
anybody?
do a thumbs up on the screen?
Yeah, just
Yeah.
raise our hands.
Yeah.
Oh,
Can you see
okay.
us all, Gail?
Yeah, all right.
I don't even see my hand.
I can't figure out this camera. There we go.
Okay, and we don't have a picture, we don't have an active picture for Kathy, who's not on it, and Sue is,
But Kathy would not be a voting member of this
that's right,
committee.
but Sue is, and Sue's got,
Here's my
So-
thumbs up.
Sue is a yes.
Call from Walgreens truck.
what? Walgreens? Someone has got a Walgreens. Can you mute yourself? We don't
That
want,
was me. This is Kathy. I was just looking down your list to see how you were all voting. Everybody showed a thumbs up.
oh, okay, thank you. Okay. All right, so now that decision has been made. So now I think we can move forward with that concrete decision in front of us. And so, Deb, if you can go ahead and put up the whiteboard, and then as we discuss it further, if you can just kind of be putting forth whatever we throw out there as conversations. So ladies, the screen is going to change it. And again, I love people who know what they're doing with technology. And Debbie is just saying that she's going to figure this out. So we think we're going to get a whiteboard up where she's going to be able to take notes as we talk. So, but I think that the concrete issue is that we have now decided we are not going to do anything with the hotel. I've been in communication with whatever her name is.
Leslie, is it still Leslie, Gail?
Yeah, Leslie Navarro, and I'll tell her just, to cancel us, that we're not going to do anything over there at the hotel, and that we're just going to do something as a webinar or something like that online. And the thing is I thought it was interesting, Paula, for regional conference, the attendance, because it was technologically and remote, the attendance was larger than if we had had an in-person meeting.
Way.
Yes.
Double. At
Yes.
least double.
At least, oh, yeah, at least double. We had 170 registers.
Yeah,
So-
and Diane, you and Sue put the whole thing together at the last minute. You kind of flipped. What learnings did you have in restructuring it that are good lessons for us to know?
Susan Brody really did all the technical things. She was right on top of it, took classes and so on. So I feel like it's very easy once you learn how to do it. And I thought it worked marvelously well. So I would call in Carolyn Cooley and Susan Brody to help you out, because they were unbelievable. And both of them work so well together, and they're such nice people that there will be no problem at all.
Yes, there will be, because I never got on and they couldn't figure out what my problem was. And I've not had any problem getting on Zoom, but I was never able to get on the webinar.
I have no
Well,
idea why.
now don't put yourself 100% into Zoom, because I've talked with Carolyn and Kathy, and they are doing a technological assessment of different online meeting softwares. And then they're going to report back to Paula and the board, and they will then make a decision. So it may or may not be a Zoom platform. It may be somebody else's platform. There are several options out there. Google has one called Google Meet. Microsoft has one called Microsoft Teams. And I don't know, I suspect there's others, but I know that they're doing an assessment about pros and cons. And so Zoom may or may not be the platform.
Well, and also Paula we will have had fall leadership. And I'm sure things will be learned through that also. So,
Sally,
before we
I'd like
really
to-
have to set things up.
Sally, I'd like to insert here, it is very expensive to do a webinar. Zoom, you can pay on a monthly basis. So we have some decisions as a state to make, whether we want to support one specific one by paying for it, or two and paying for two. None of them are free.
However, you can pay by the month, and like Sue Brody, when she realized that it was going over 100 participants, she had to upgrade her webinar license, which she did for that month, just for the regional, and then you go back. So there, like we said, I've asked Kathy and Carolyn to really look into this and bring it to the board so we can see what possibilities there are.
Well, the platform is really not going to be our decision. We will work with whatever platform the executive committee votes to participate with for AAUW. But I think the functionality is going to be relatively similar in the fact that it's going to be something that we have learned on Zoom of a webinar, and the fact that we can have presentations in Zoom, and I suspect on the others, there's also something called breakout rooms. So you can have small group breakouts and have people discussing things together and then report back. As you're going to see here with Debbie, what she's doing is being able to do whiteboarding kind of thing where we take notes and hear it and see it. And you can see what Debbie's putting up here on the screen for you right now.
I
We can
can't
play
see anything.
videos. We can, it's pretty multifunctionality wise. And I'll tell you, this is not new to my son-in-law, who is in the tech industry. He has worked from home for the last 15 years. He works with teams all over the world, literally all over the world, and they are always able to create all kinds of group discussions and do all kinds of stuff. They don't feel that they're limited because of technology is the bottom line. So I think we need to always think outside the box and don't let our past experiences limit our thinking as to how we do this. So that said, we're now going to figure out how what topic we want to do and how best to do that topic electronically. Yes.
I don't have anything on my screen except a big thing saying Zoom.
Oh, really?
I have
You have Debbie's screen that says topics. And
no, I have nothing like that. I have nothing but a big Zoom on mine. And everything I've tried to click doesn't. I don't have anything else to click on.
Are you on Android or are you on Apple?
I'm on the computer.
Yeah, but but what's your operating? Is it a Windows?
Apple?
Is it an Apple or a Windows?
No, it's not an Apple.
It's not an Apple.
Georgina?
Yes.
Georgina, this is Debbie. If you are using your browser, the actual Zoom window might be behind it. See if you can minimize the thing that says Zoom.
How would I? Nothing's happening.
Up in the right-hand corner, a little minus sign.
Yeah, the minus sign.
Okay, now I've got a background and pictures, but I don't have anything else. I mean, I can listen to the discussion, but I certainly can't see anything.
Yeah, did you download the Zoom app or are you on a web version of it?
No, I had the Zoom, I thought.
I
had everything in the beginning and it went away.
Huh.
I had problems once in a while, a long time ago, and I just went out and then re-entered the meeting, and sometimes it comes back for you.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that.
Okay.
Okay, so if Kathy is still there, she may have to admit you to the meeting again.
No problem. I'll readmit her if she's.
If I can get off, I can. Yeah.
And I also see that Betty is not with us at the moment. She may have just dropped out for a minute to run someplace. And I know Sue Ryden is on a phone as opposed to a laptop. And so Sue's kind of handicapped as far as what she can see, I suspect, on her phone. Sue, am I correct?
Yes, I can see you. I can see whoever's speaking, but I don't have the gallery feature for some reason. So.
Yeah, she's in the same.
But I can see Debbie's document.
Oh, you can. Okay.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm at the hospital and I'm down in the garden area. So hopefully I can stay here while we meet.
Bless your heart.
Yeah. Bad timing for Sue.
Yeah. I think things are improving. So that's the hopeful thing. Yeah.
So Sue, you also, as long as we have you on the phone here, why don't we, you had some thoughts as to, you know, the big picture as to how we might want to move forward. Why don't you make your comments here?
Okay. So I was just trying to think about the issues that are before us. And I think there's no doubt that we're going to have at least three major issues by February. The fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic, the Black Lives Matter movement, and the 2020 election results. So for me, I think the conversation we already had about the diversity, which seems to be one of the national goals, is to have more outreach, more partnerships, working more on equity, not just gender-wise, but also race-wise. I think what we, and I believe in the idea of reaching out. There's a really, Nita Mosby Tyler has a really good TED Talk on. She got selected for a national TED Talk. And so you can find her TED Talk, but she's really talking about being allies and how to do that. And I think that a lot of us have awareness and have had an awareness of these issues for a long time. But the actual doing something about it and being effective has not been really a focus or an action item. And knowing how to do that and what to do. As somebody said, this isn't about us. This is about how we can help you. Not how you can help us, but how we can help you. And so I guess my hope is that we would do something along the lines of the diversity inclusion, but more than just hearing about it, having some really good, meaningful conversations and coming out with some action plans. I think we can take more of a leadership role than we've had in the past. We're more reactive, it seems, than proactive. And I think it's a really great opportunity to be able to do that. And I do think that our women of color are maybe coming to a place also where they're more willing to talk about the issues and be frank. I mean, some of the stories we've been hearing, I mean, it's just outrageous. You know, some of the specific details of people's experiences that you usually don't hear. You just hear generalities. or you hear the police brutality, but just the day-to-day living and what we can do to have just a better understanding, and then an action plan, I guess. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, and I just wanted to kind of throw that out for discussion and see how that ties in. You know, one of our major things for Public Policy Day is to, you know, support specific legislative bills that are coming before the legislature. But I think it would be really good for us to be focused on the diversity and the women's equity issues within those different topics. And I don't, you know, I guess that's just what I am thinking about, and maybe even in the planning process, drawing some new people in to help us plan and maybe do it as a partnering event, not just our event where we invite other people to come, but a more inclusive co-partnership or alliance of people where we might be the main sponsor, but they would have an active role in planning and carrying out the, you know, the event. And being virtual, I think, gives us a whole new world of opportunity. We have, I think, a chance to have a national speaker, and our panelists could be, you know, from across the state. They wouldn't have to be someone that could get to Denver. So I'd like to broaden our whole horizon as far as who can be there and who can participate and who could even help us with the planning. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I would love to hear what people's reactions are and talk about what you think we could zero in on.
So I'd like to hear from everybody. You know, Paula and Sue and I have kind of put our thoughts forward here. So let's hear from some of the rest of you.
I think as a subtopic to the fallout of the COVID, we need to, again, keep education up there at the top.
I agree.
Education, are you talking about public education or
Public
education of ourselves?
Do you have any specific ideas about that?
A jillion, but nothing specific. You know, my concern is, will things will change dramatically in education, as they had to. They've been required to do so. But this online learning, I think, is going to be a very critical part of our education system forever, I think. And how do families, you know, how are they able to do that? How are they able to provide the resources for them to do online learning? How are mom and dad, one of them, going to be able to stay home and direct the lives of these younger children through the online learning? I just don't know, you know.
Yeah, and this is Stacy. I think there's huge issues with disparity in online learning. You know, for example, I'm fortunate. I live in a district where the kids already had Chromebooks and Google Classroom, but you know, in poorer districts, the kids don't have access to technology. They may be rural and not have access to an internet connection. I think there's the potential for a generation of kids that are coming from a poor or rural area to not graduate because they cannot access education.
This is Georgina, and I'd like to add funding because it's been cut and right at a time when they need more. If they're going to have classes in schools, that cost is going to be enormous to try to meet some of the safety measures.
Well, and I'm thinking with, you know, our whole idea of diversity and inclusion and all of that, this could be sort of a side issue but I think we should be looking at the idea of, and Deb just wrote down disparity, the disparity that there is between children who have the socioeconomic ability to deal and pivot with this and those that do not. And it's going to widen the gap. And so I agree that I think that might be a good sort of side issue along with this whole diversity, especially since AAUW has always been so education oriented. I really agree with everything that's been said. I think this is excellent.
I would like
don't
to.
want to lose the whole issue here of the faculty, not just the student.
Mm-hmm.
I would also like to echo what we received from Kathy Hall about a living wage. There was an article in last week's post about the fact that a person working full-time at minimum wage can no longer afford to rent a home, apartment, whatever, in the greater Denver metro area. So if we're going to address diversity and inclusion, we also need to address the ability for people to make an equitable income.
I had an idea just as we were thinking, you know, most branches, like our branch, we probably have, well, we have one person of color who is on our board and maybe one other who comes to the meetings. And I would think that a lot of the branches, except Colorado Springs, who's bigger, probably has more.
No.
We
No.
do not.
No, we don't
We
at
do
all.
not.
Oh, okay. Well, but some branches have some people. And I often wonder when our person is there is what does she think? And we've had before people of diversity, I mean, of color in our group. But what do they think when they're with all of the white ladies? And she's also young. Okay. So what are they thinking they're with all the gray haired white ladies? And how do they feel about this group? And how do they feel? Do they feel included? You know, does Jubei, who's our person, does she feel included? Does she feel? I think she does, but you know, and does she feel? How do they feel being in this all-white group? And what can we do? Maybe we'll get some insight as to are we really welcoming or are we not? And if we're not, what can we do? Do you see where we get the standpoint just for one session of where do the people who do come to our meetings, what do they feel? And about AAUW, and this is really the group for them. And are we welcoming? Do you see? And do we fit? Do we answer the needs that people of color have as well? So that's one suggestion.
Well, and I was thinking too that you know, when I was in the legislature, there would be different days for different groups, and there are a number of Black women sororities, alumni groups, who do all kinds of projects. And to me, they're almost invisible in the community. This is something it's like I want to break through these bubbles of, I know there are, and you know, we often talk about the disadvantaged and the poor folks, but there are many successful Black women in our community and Hispanic women in our community. And I am just trying to get my mind around why we haven't found a way to get together, because we have to have many similar issues and yet we have some really different ones. But my goal is to try to get us together and pop these bubbles and, you know, be equals in a group setting and have enough critical mass that people don't feel like I'm the token person here.
There you go.
I totally agree, Sue.
Yeah. This is Lindy. It's too big a topic to cover everything. And I like the idea of diversity with a focus on education and how what we're doing in education can help as just as a way of limiting, because we can't take care of housing and rent and fair wages and everything all at once.
You're so right.
That's why I almost wonder if what we look at it as is a beginning to start the conversation, the really deep conversation that is more than just an awareness that there are problems, but, and get, you know, maybe education becomes the focus of that. Maybe it's workplace equity that is the focus, but the premise being this has to change. We have to work together. We keep saying we're all in this together, and yet everyone's in their separate boat. And let's all get on the same boat, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I wonder if virtually is an opportunity to reach out to some of these Black sororities, Black nonprofits, and invite people to join us online. It would be a lot less threatening, perhaps, than 2 or 3 people coming to public policy day.
Right.
Definitely.
Especially on the meeting ideas, like the webinar idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe if we don't want to go to our branches, maybe this is where National could come in, who I'm sure is having the same types of discussions and have had for years. Maybe we have them present something that represents these views. I think what we're going to see next, starting very soon, is everybody and their brother are going to have conferences on this, which I think is good. I'd like to see it, bringing it to our group. How does we as AAUW members, how does it affect us? You know, rather than keeping it on kind of a, I'd hate for us to go into an intellectual, that we get so intellectual and so kind of remote that, yeah, we can do this in education or we can do this in housing and stuff like that. And then we all go back, yes, that's a really good idea. And then we do nothing. And it doesn't affect us one way or the other. And I think sometimes that happens when we have conferences. If, you know, we have the opportunity now to really bring it in, hone it in for us. And maybe we make a difference. We actually are part of the solution. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, yeah. And I think maybe by doing that, then you can offer help and say, what can we do to help you in what you're trying to do?
I think we're taking on way too much, and we need to do something like, I think we should focus on education. We're talking public policy. I really think the focus should be on education. We can't take on everything, especially when we don't even know how the election is going to turn out. Scary thought, but it's not impossible that we'll have the same president a year from now that we have right now. And it will certainly impact how things are going.
I like the idea that Sue brought up about a partnering event. We can't put this all together and then call NAACP or Together Colorado and say, hey, come to this.
Right.
We have to engage them. We have to invite them into the process if we are going to do anything with respect to the topic, right? Because they won't come. I can almost guarantee you they won't come.
Right.
Well, really, what's in it for them besides just, quote, you know, saying the same things over and over? But I'm wanting to get new people too that aren't always on TV, that aren't the ministers, that are not the nonprofits, that are not the, you know, the food banks. but that are people in the community who are really doing a lot of things. And I think maybe we could make it better by all of us working together and showing that we really want to participate. To me, that's kind of the topic. And then all the other topics fall under that. Is what specific issues is the Alpha Delta Pi Black sorority working on that we could be helpful in? What, are they doing things in the schools that they could use our help on? You got to watch Nita's presentation. She does tell some of the stories she told us, but she also talks about, and I can't remember, she doesn't call it accidental, but she calls it unexpected allies, and how to become one. And, the personal level of participation in doing something. It doesn't have to be a giant project, but how you start behaving yourself in your own community, I think. And to me, that's a topic that then education, housing, workforce, everything else kind of falls under that for me. Because we're not going to make policy change on education. We can support bills that are in the legislature, and I think that definitely has to be a part of the conference, is what's coming up, who's presenting bills, what do the education bills look like, are they in our focus area? We will be dealing with those issues too, but to me, the whole theme of the conference is working together, coming together, something like an alliance that's never been there before.
I'd like to share one quote that has been kind of my focus, and Sue, it kind of reinforces exactly what you're talking about. It's a Rumi quote, and I'm kind of using it this year in particular, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, but yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. And I think that really puts it together of what everybody here is talking about. How do we change to help others and do it? So it's something that I refer to in a lot of my planning and thinking for the next couple of years.
That is a great, great quote. Yeah.
Who is that by, Paula?
Rumi.
I think that to me is the key of where we need to head, is how do we create that change within ourselves and as an individual. So I don't think it's just going out and volunteering in the food bank that serves the low-income community of color. It's understanding why the low-income community of color needs the food bank.
And it's just not of color either. We have food banks up here, in Evergreen.
No, they even have them in Douglas County.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
So I think that Paula really has to me hit the nail on the head. Today I'm wise, so I want to change. So, to me that's the challenge, is to how do we do the introspective promotion of self-change. And I think that you've said that, Paula, you said that that Dr. Sanders is going to be talking to that at
Samuel's
leadership, because you said she's specifically going to have a self-assessment, and I think that that's not easy for people to go through. If you've never gone through it, it really makes you look at yourself, and it makes you be honest with yourself, and it's not your comfort zone generally.
Well,
yeah, so much of what we do and think is subconscious anyway. So you don't really have it on the top of mind until you actually start examining those things. And I think if the fall conference is going to do that, then the policy day could be the follow-up to that, and putting some of those thoughts into action and working with people to make that policy day happen.
I heard this interesting talk on NPR. It was a woman who was in charge of either Black Lives Matter or in some group that was with Black Lives Matter or something related. And they said that what is your main focus? Are you trying to have people change their attitude towards Black people or policy? And she said, well, that would be nice. And she said, but our main goal is to have policy changes. And she said, that's going to be what's going to help us, because we can't control if people change their attitudes or not. But what we want is policy, and we want things that specifically are going to help us. And so I think both need to happen. But I thought that was an interesting perspective. And she said, if their attitudes change, fine. If they don't, fine. But at least the policy was changed. So.
Yeah, well, you sometimes have to change the behavior before you change the attitude.
Well, you sometimes have to change the attitude before you can change the policy.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, but once if you haven't, it doesn't take everyone to make policy.
Right.
So the policy are the laws. Once you're forced to do something and you start becoming a habit, then you start changing your attitude. That's usually the way it works. Now we're in a whole new world here, but
the speaker's name is Samuels, not Samuelson. Thank you.
So I guess if we are in semi-agreement that we do want to reach out and have more involvement, and that the virtual space will give us more opportunities, should we start planning toward that and see if topics emerge from that pre-planning stage? And not settle on a specific topic at this point, but see what we find out from trying to get other people involved.
This is Betty. I agree with Lindy that our first set of things here is pretty broad, and we would want to do what Sue is suggesting and narrow it down to some meaningful topics. As a professor at CU, I can tell you that I'm really, really concerned about how education is going. So personally, I would like to see us study the second one, the fallout on education.
Well, and Debbie, when you're talking about the fallout to education, I think it's going to be different fallouts on higher ed than is PK-12.
It is, definitely. PK-12 had more protection for keeping funding, federal funding, whereas the college levels did not. And the idea that we sent students home to learn online had very, very, very mixed results depending on the teachers, the schools, the age of the children. I know quite a few teachers who also suffered greatly with trying to make this work, and they know they didn't get their students to learn what they were supposed to learn, and it's very, very concerning. Are we going to leave a whole generation with a gap here? I think there's a lot that could be discussed about education. We could spend days on it.
Yeah.
But that's just my 2 cents, ladies.
Okay, and so you're talking about a different subject, like education for education, right?
I'm talking about the second one here.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have diversity, and then we have education. Okay.
And Debbie, right? I think by February, we're going to have a whole different group of information than what we have now in relationship to education too. And I think
Yes, and I would actually expect that we're going to see some interesting legislation about education in the coming years as well, because there are going to be significant problems for students and families and employers. And I mean, resources aren't even just limited to rural problems. You know, we've always had that rural gap where people don't have enough internet connections, and the time that they spend in front of a computer is a lot less because they are out in the fields and things like that. But like I know families right here in Aurora who make plenty of money. They have nice computer equipment for their children, and all of a sudden their 5 children are all having to attend online school at the same time. Now they need 4 more computers and more bandwidth so that 5 or 6 devices can be connected at a time and use the internet well. And that there's a cost for that. And I mean, even in the city here, we have lots of opportunities where a child could just fall through the cracks. And I do know that the federal funding for colleges is going to be miserable. In our state, I got some statistics already, but it's going to be challenging for college level.
Well, and Colorado is hamstrung by its budget issues and the fact that we spun off our higher ed as an enterprise, and now even if we had the money, we can't contribute more than 10% of their operating costs. So, you know, it's like, and I think we're at about 4% now, or 5 maybe. Yeah, it's looking pretty dreadful.
Yeah, you know, I rather agree that education is extremely timely topic right now and has always been a priority of AAUW, and there's a lot of change that's going to be lasting. I think there's a lot that could be said on that topic at a conference. I think equity, as important as it is, I think that's a real moving target, and it might be a really hard thing for us to address. You know, we've talked, you know, we're a bunch of white women, for us to kind of get that right when everything is changing so much with the politics and the election, and we don't know what will happen in November. That is such an important topic, but I don't know how we would handle that ball of wax sort of thing and get that right.
Thank you, Stacy. You kind of put together some of my thoughts. If fall leadership, Paula is pulling in this Dr. Samuels, and maybe, you know, kind of getting people thinking about mindfulness in leadership. I think that was kind of what she was going to talk about and stuff. I see we can go 2 ways. We can build on that, or as Stacy was saying, then use and we can't assume everybody for Public Policy Day will have logged into fall leadership. Although hopefully it will be way larger than a normal fall leadership, just like our regional was. But then do we kind of look at the issue of education, you know, bringing in this idea of the diversity, of the gap that is increasing and all of that. I don't think we can do both. And I agree with Stacy that this diversity and inclusion, I mean, I don't even know where to start with that. So that's just my thought.
I agree. This is Georgina, and I definitely agree. I'd really like us to go with the education aspect.
If you haven't pulled up the chat, Betty's got a comment in chat, so just, that's where she's making her comments.
I don't have chat.
I don't, okay, there we go.
Okay, well, I'll read you what Betty said. There are also the issues of parents who have had to take on a whole new role in their children's education while trying to maintain their jobs and income.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Very much so.
Correct, and they can't work while they're doing that. It's impacting their work and then impacting their employers as a result. I mean, there are huge fallouts from this COVID-19 thing. Huge.
Well, to the point of my personal life, my two grandchildren are at home. Their parents both work from home. Their parents can't get work done when they've got two kids running around the house. So my childcare role has ramped up significantly. My husband's not home today because he's got the two grandkids out to play so the parents can get their work done.
Yeah, and the person who is doing the caregiving ends up being, quote unquote, the homeschooler. Is your child online when they're supposed to be? Are you discussing the content that they got with them? Are you making sure they understand what their homework is? Are you helping them turn it in online? All of that falls on the parent or the caregiver.
And traditionally, homeschooling was not done as a side job for the parent. It was their job that they took upon themselves. They purchased curriculum, they got involved, they actually were way more involved than just the classroom monitor. They actually, and then, so that's one issue of this homeschooling issue, because homeschooling is very different than being schooled at home electronically. They're two very different systems.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And
I don't think we want to deal with any homeschooling. I mean, the traditional homeschooling. That's not what I see as what we want to be talking about.
No, not at all.
This is Georgina again. Another aspect of this is we wouldn't have as much of this if there were a safe way to reopen the schools. And there's such a diversity across the country, since my son's trying to teach in Florida where they have no guidelines, but they want everybody back in school. And there could be tremendous fallout from that. So the safety of the kids in being able to go back to school, and how is this going to happen?
And I've spoken with several teachers who are writing their wills at the same time they're writing their classroom plan for the day. Something's wrong with that picture. And also, there's a lot of people who are retiring. So Colorado has, Sue, tell me, how many years has the state legislature thrown additional money at rural communities to try to recruit faculty because they can't get them out there? So there's already a shortage of educators in rural communities. The shortage is going to be dramatically greater because teachers are retiring or just resigning because they don't feel safe in the classroom and they don't like the idea of doing online education. So the domino effect is huge.
Yeah, and I'd like to see the point of view of having the children actually in the classroom represented, because we're hearing a lot of stuff that the online education isn't working in many ways, even at the higher education. It does work, but you do have the case for having teacher interaction and student interaction. So I'd like to see that represented too. And how can that be done safely? You know, have somebody talk about that.
And Joan, that is a huge issue. And parents are in a very difficult position right now as districts are making the best plans that they can. And what are they going to do? Because I mean, I'm not going to go into all of that, but it's a huge issue. One of our problems is we're sitting here in mid-July trying to talk about this. By February,
that was my point.
It's either going to be better than we thought, or it's going to be worse than we thought. And we don't have any way to know that. But I think that the fallout from this, no matter what happens, will still definitely be with us. And Sue said that, I think it was Sue anyway, that she thought that the legislature would probably have many education bills. I mean, they're probably already being kind of worked on. I mean, Sue and Betty would know that far better than I. But if we could look at those bills and then, I mean, we won't know what they are, but then use that as sort of our base, and then have people coming in that, you know, have a more idea about what's going on in the state, and pick out some issues we want to be addressing, to help us see, you know, what action ideas we can take.
Of course, we won't know the bills that are coming before the House or the Senate until.
Oh, no, until just before. No,
Yeah,
we will not
just
know
like
them.
2 weeks before.
Yeah, no, we
So
won't
that would be
really
difficult.
know.
Well,
The
you know,
school
Nancy,
finance, the school finance bill is going to have a huge impact because right now schools are funded by children in seats. If children aren't in seats and they're sitting at home, does that call being in a seat?
we'll have to see how they take attendance this year.
Mhm.
But you know, Nancy Todd is a member of our AAUW in Aurora, and she is now a former state legislator, one of the few who served the full 16 years. And I think she could be a lot of help to us in what's going on, because I'm sure she's still going to have her finger in a lot of those pies, and will be able to give us a lot of advance information along the lines of specifics that are happening. But we also have to realize that this, you know, is not going to be a permanent situation, and people will start getting back to school. I'm guessing there's going to be a whole bunch of catch up time and probably longer school days and going into the summer for kids to catch up. That would be my guess as to one way that they can do it, because by the time there's finally a vaccine, it's still going to take a while for everybody to get it. But at some point, they're going to be sort of back to normal.
Just a thought that probably is throwing a monkey wrench into things, but is there anything that says we have to have this event the first Saturday in February? Now that we
I
don't,
was thinking the same thing, Lindy.
given that we're always scrambling to figure out what's going on in the legislature, does this situation sort of change that dynamic? And we could maybe do the first part of March and have a better idea if we really want to deal with legislative issues of what's going on.
Let me read another chat that Betty has posted here. It says, as a starter, we can expect to see many of the bills that didn't make it across the finish line this next year. And then she suggests, as Sue did, is to see about Nancy Todd being a part of it. And she really likes your comment, Lindy, about timing.
One thing, if we're going to change the month, I think we should make a decision fairly fast on that and get the word out to the branches, because I know our branches, and probably a lot of branches now, are using the Public Policy Day as their branch meeting.
Right.
If we're going to move to March, they're going to have to change their programming as well, or they'll want to.
Well, and just an argument for earlier is, if we want to be in support of some of these bills, some of them are probably going to come up and go pretty quickly too. If they've been in the bin already. So by February, there may be bills that are already, you know, in second reading at that point. So
Sure.
just a thought about the timing.
That was a good point.
Yeah, well, that's kind of, Sue and Betty can kind of try to figure that out if they want to change.
Well, and if you wanted to change, you could most likely split it too. You could have one group or half of it looking at legislation on the quick turnaround like we've done historically, and then have a public policy day with more in-depth discussion and long-term looking at issues at a later time.
So are we now getting away from the idea of trying to involve some other people in this process, or
How we do that?
what is your thinking on that?
I'm thinking that if you're going to be inclusive of other people in planning this, we should either begin it tomorrow or give it a serious consideration, because our planning starts today. And I don't know, it seems like they're going to be a true part of the planning process. We have to make our alliances now and then have another meeting in order to figure out the focus of our meeting.
The reason this meeting was set so early, I think, had something to do with convention and the fact that we didn't want the two meetings together. I'm not sure about that, and I don't have that at hand, but having done the history, there was originally a reason as to why this was set so early.
What we might want to consider is we begin the discussion about diversity and inclusion, and the organization called AAUW at the Fall Leadership Conference, and then move that into programming for the state convention. And in between, we have the education dilemma due to the fallout from COVID-19, or however you want to phrase it, as more of a public policy focus. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I agree.
I mean, I think I'm almost thinking these are, two very different subjects, and we need to split them up.
Definitely.
Now, it may be in the future that once we've had these discussions about diversity and inclusion, we will also want to do some public policy work on that topic. But I think we owe it to ourselves as an organization to have that discussion first.
Okay, Betty has posted some additional comments. I'll read them to you. She says, I have found it as a challenge to turn around bills for the 1st of February. I think January would be difficult. Does the timing go back to when the event was a 2-day event with lobbying day on Friday? So which you may remember, Friday, people would go down to the Capitol and lobby, and then have the conference discussion on Saturday. So she's throwing that out. I'm looking at the time, and I'm thinking you have all been in this Zoom meeting for quite a while. Do we want to take a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
think.
No,
yeah,
I'm
I think
okay.
I've seen a lot of people getting up and turning off. So it is now quarter till, so let's get back in about 5 minutes, about 10 till.
Okay.
I'm gonna run over if you'd like to come with me, but I put my David's trash in.
Oh, okay. All right.
So it looks like lots of us are back, but I don't see Deb note page up anymore. Does anybody else have her note page up?
I do not, Gail. Here she comes.
I just looked up in the history that I wrote, and I cannot find any reason as to why it was established that it would be the first Saturday in February.
Oh, there it is. My guesstimate is that it had something to do with when legislation was being dropped and when we could have an impact on it.
Well, it's what I have is the objective was to acquaint members with problems facing Colorado due to increased enrollment in schools at all levels. The leadership was also felt the need to become better acquainted with their legislators and the legislative process. So maybe it was because it was at the beginning and therefore they could follow the process as it progressed through the next couple of months.
I'm not really sure what happened. It had something to do with that whiteboard this presented.
Well, you know, this also
Can't hear
raises,
you.
But
this
the other
also,
point-
I'm going to have to leave briefly, but I'll be back.
The only time it has been changed is when Amy changed it in 2012. She pushed it back a week.
okay. This
She
also
has-
raises the issue that Betty put on the table and the fact that she is not going to be our lobbyist long-term. That, you know, she's coming to the end of her ability and willingness to be the on-site lobbyist. And so as that changes, we're going to have to figure out how to address that issue. You know, there's lots of ways we could address it. And I'm not saying one's better than another, but it also says that the subject needs to be thought about.
I really think it went back though in the beginning to the 2-day thing. We would go up there on Friday. The legislature was in session. We'd go view the legislative session and we'd spend the night and then have it the next day. So I think what was true then certainly is no longer true now. We're not doing that anymore.
Yes, that's right, Georgina. And we did the bills Friday night. I mean, we did all that work at that dinner meeting, not on a telephone call like we do now.
Right.
So,
Paula, do you have any thoughts about all of this? Paula, if you're speaking, I think you're on mute.
I'm sorry, are you asking me?
Yeah, I was wondering if you had any thoughts you wanted to share about timing or anything.
You know, this year is just so crazy anyway. I think if we feel as if that should be changed, I think it certainly would be fine. I wouldn't want it to go because we're planning on the end of April for our state convention. So I think if we moving it to March would be okay, but I don't think it can be moved any later than that.
well, no, we can't.
I think that was part of the reason that was put in February too.
Well, what about not the beginning of February, but the end of February? It wouldn't disrupt the branches as much. It would give a month time for the legislature to be in session, a little more time. What about that, just changing it a little bit later instead of the first Saturday?
I think we always feel rushed with that first Saturday, but if we're going to actively weigh in on bills, like we've already said, many of them will already be in committee, etc. And if we wait till the end of February, many of the bills that we would want to weigh in on may already be either dead or moving way on through.
Oh, okay.
So, and in the last few years, the bills that we have opposed have mostly been reproductive right bills. And we've been very lucky that most of those have been killed in committee very early on. But we've had a chance to weigh in on them and put in our opposition. So that's just, you know, my thoughts, that we can change it, but I wouldn't want to go very late, or I think we're going to lose reaching our membership about what they need to and can be working on that we're supporting and opposing.
And that's a very good point. And maybe just the middle of the month then.
That's what Betty says, that the middle of the month works, but not the end.
Okay.
The
That
second
would be
Saturday can conflict with Valentine's Day, as I recall. But the third,
Well, that's an interesting thing, Linda, because when we were doing a physical meeting, it made a difference. When we're doing online.
Point. Yeah. Yeah. And that week might just give enough time to be a little bit more relaxed, and I'm not sure that's the word, but not be quite so rushed in figuring out what bills are coming. Because there'll always be some that are introduced later.
Right.
But you want to catch the ones at the beginning, and who knows?
Do any of you remember what it was like back when it was changed? Whether it made it easier?
I have no recollection.
Yeah.
Me either.
I was not able to attend.
So the first Saturday would be February 6th, and the second Saturday would be the 13th. So
based on Sunday.
What?
As I recall, Betsy, in answer to your question, when it was changed that 1 year, 1 week later,
right,
we had poor attendance.
Yeah.
But that's physical attendance, so that's kind of a different thing. So, but I do think our attendance went down that year because people are just used to having it the first Saturday in February.
I also think that, unless my calendar is wrong, it looks like February 15th is President's Day. Is that, if that's accurate, that means that's a 3-day weekend for several folks?
Oh, you are
holiday
absolutely
weekend.
right. Yes. And who knows, by that point, maybe people can take advantage of that.
I think we should just keep it at the 6th.
I do too.
I agree, and that's later. I mean, this year it was so early on the 1st. The 6th, you know, gives us almost another week of stuff going on in the legislature. So I would agree. I think we should keep it on the 6th.
Let's do that and move on.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, decision, it stays on the 6th.
On at 12.
So I really am absolutely feel like I've been hit by a tsunami with ideas here, and I'm not sure how to sort them out. The whole impact of COVID-19 on education, and the whole issue of racial equity, and that article that Paula sent out, I think was just absolutely fascinating. I think what Paula is picking up on regional is almost ahead of that article as to where we go with all of that. I think those are two enormously important topics. I don't know what the juxtaposition of the two of them might be.
I really strongly think we should stick to the education aspect of it. The other thing is overwhelming, and I agree with the idea of doing it at fall leadership and then maybe following up at the convention. And with education, we'll still be dealing with inequities, which certainly impacts people of color as more than anyone else, but it's something that's really our area of expertise. And I think that that would be the way to go with this meeting. That's just my feeling.
Georgina, if we stayed with the education, Sue Ryden, who's not on the phone call at the moment, but her challenge to us has been, how do we do something, not just giving ourselves an awareness, but the steps of change, basically. The first step being awareness, the second, that how do we do something about it once we know? And I think that's what Sue Ryden is trying to challenge us to thinking about, is not just knowing and learning and educating from a theoretical, but from an action point and beyond state legislation.
Well, I think it'd be an easier thing to tackle if we just focus on education than if we try to do the whole equity thing on a broad basis.
I mean, I agree with Georgina, and I think some of the ideas in this first, diversity and inclusion, are excellent. But the idea of pulling in other groups in our planning and such, I wouldn't even know where to begin to do that. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed by life in general. And so if other people think that's a way to go and they can do that, go for it. But personally, I don't know how much on board I could be to help with that. It's just too much. That's my feeling.
Well, education is the basis on which AAUW was founded, more or less towards higher education, but we would be going back to our roots, so to speak.
I think we need to say we focus on one or the other.
I concur.
It's just way too broad if we try to put all of that together for one day.
No, for 3 hours.
3 hours,
right.
Yeah. But if we are going to do education, we better make it pretty, because frankly, education can be boring for a lot of people, and it better push a lot of buttons if we're going to get participation.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and it's almost like if 2 years ago we hadn't already had Nita Mosby Tyler, I mean, she would be excellent to be talking to us about the first issue. We already had her. She did that.
She could do it again.
Is there a second phase? I mean, she's not stopped doing it.
Oh, no, she hasn't. And she did a shortened version for us.
Yeah. I think that we could have, Nina go on to other issues. And if you've ever heard her on the TED Talks, which I heard, she does go on to other stuff. But I don't see Nina being a speaker for us if we do education. She would be more for the inclusion part.
Oh,
so
really?
I agree with Sue that the inclusion part is been covered at fall and spring conference, if that's the way they want to go, and we just focus on education. But I also agree we better make it interesting and so that it will attract the various interests of people in the education topic, because it can be boring. So I'd like to see us, like you, represent different perspectives, like the parent or grandparent perspective, also the educator, the teacher's perspective, whether it be, and then the higher education, I think, is really a big thing. And that's where a lot of the funding is going to be, I think, maybe for bills.
So I agree with all of that too. And I think the fall conference, the follow up to that, is then the planning for the spring convention would work best with that diversity piece. And it seems to me that you've got to include the technology and the online learning and where that is and where it's going. And are we closed-minded to it because we don't like the way it's been done by the corporate world? Is it going to become a bigger part of education regardless? I think that's an interesting topic.
Yeah, I think that is too.
And you're certainly going to hit equity issues in talking about all that. It isn't like the equity is put back on the table. Excuse me. We've still got equity in who can access online education, and there are just all kinds of issues there too. So I don't feel like we're ignoring equity and diversity in talking about education.
Yeah, I like that. I'm going to have to leave you guys. So it sounds like you're coming to some good resolutions. And I'll get in touch after the meeting and see the final conclusions and where we go from here. Okay. Sorry, I got to go.
Okay.
Okay, take care, Sue.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Ladies, this is Debbie. Can we brainstorm just for a minute about speakers in the education topic there? We would want a teacher or a school board member, or what do we want? Who do we want to talk about these things?
Have we settled, before we go into that depth, have we kind of settled that that's our comfort zone of using education and the impact of COVID-19 on education moving forward, and now start framing it out?
I think you may need to take a vote, Gail.
All right, let's take a vote. Let's say, again, how do we do this?
Just raise their hand.
Just raise your hand physically.
Yeah.
So what
But
are
you
we
need to say what we're voting on.
What are we waiting?
The topic is going to be the broad topic of education. And then Debbie has got a bunch of notes about and some conversation about the parent, grandparent role, the educator role, online and technology, the disparity, economic and rural access versus community access, the whole economic issue there. And then also the aspect of higher ed and PK-12 being different. How we frame that out has yet to be discussed, but those are subsets within the education that we can travel down one of those paths, or several of those paths. So does that clarify what we're voting on?
Yes.
So raise your hand if you're comfortable figuring out how we go with education. So that's just a physical hand raise. Okay, I think we've got it. Okay, so back to Deb's wonderful screen. Deb, this is really helpful to have you taking these notes online for us.
So Betty and Paula, you did not raise your hands?
I didn't think I was a voting member.
Yeah, she's not.
Yeah, she's not.
I'm just an ex officio
And
member.
Betty's hand was below the camera. I could just kind of see her fingertips.
Oh, okay. All right, great.
My only concern with this topic is that there's going to be so much going on this fall that, you know, how it's just going to be changing so readily
Yeah.
of what the picture is. And it's just going to be a tricky one to get the speakers lined up and do it. But I think it's a great topic.
And Betty totally agrees with you. She says she's concerned about excitement and attendance. So we need to really be very, very thoughtful in how we frame this out. Lindy, you're muted, Lindy.
Yeah, I know my lawn guy was blowing out to the window. I think that given how much about education is in the news now and how much there probably will be all fall, I'm not sure it's going to be quite as difficult as maybe you think to get people interested.
I kind of
agree.
I agree.
Our topics can be broad enough.
Different. And different is always more interesting than same old, same old. Not that we don't have to work at it. But
I think we can bring in the equity and the diversity issues under education, which I think might be, something of timely interest.
I don't think there'd be any problem doing that.
No, I agree. I mean, that's a huge part of what's going on right now and will continue to be going on. And it's no different than it's ever been, but it's way worse now. It's such a prevalent issue. Oh, she just wrote down prevalent. I didn't see that word. I was using it. Yeah. Okay.
it's not going to be solved by February.
No.
No.
If you look at the evaluation, that was on the list of topics that people were interested in.
Yes, and it always is, Georgina. You're absolutely right. It's always a topic that is listed.
So there's certainly, as we've got this great screen up of Deb's, that Nancy Todd, who is, an AAUW member, a Colorado State Senator, and been certainly involved in education funding. So, I mean, I think we could, tap into Nancy Todd for multiple different aspects of all of this. But what Nancy's a middle-aged, well, maybe not even middle-aged, maybe because I'm not middle-aged anymore. I like to think that, but I'm not. But she's a white woman is where I'm headed. And so she's going to be looking at it broadly, but she also has her whiteness spin to the whole thing. So I'm not saying that Nancy's not one we would not want to get, but is there somebody who's a leader in education in Colorado who is a person of color or comes from a different, other than a middle-class suburb area, that could talk to us about specifically about how education plays out in the more challenging schools?
This may be too far out, but how about Tay Anderson from the Denver School Board?
Oh. Well, that's exactly who I was wondering about, Lindy.
How do you spell the first name?
T-A-Y.
And she's on the DPS school board?
It's a male. It's not a woman.
It's a man. Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about him, Lindy? Because I'm afraid I am not familiar with DPS stuff.
Very outspoken in what the Denver schools should be doing and what they're not doing.
Excellent. I already like it.
I can't think of anything specific. I just know I've been seeing him on TV.
He's been on
a lot.
Yeah, he's all over the news these days with this issue about we can't be complacent. We've got to do something creative and forceful.
Excellent.
Right.
I mean,
He's also a leader in Black Lives Matter.
On the edge.
Yes.
Perfect.
I mean, I've seen him on TV several times, and he's a no holds barred.
Yeah.
Speaker.
He's young. I mean,
he's gonna come out and he's just gonna tell you like it is.
Yep. Yeah, he's gonna make people uncomfortable.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
that's kind of what we wanted to do, though.
Exactly.
And you're not as uncomfortable watching on a screen as you are sitting in a ballroom. So this might be a time to pull out something like this.
Pull out all the. How do you spell his first name?
T-A-Y.
T-A-Y. Who has a connection to this man?
Just heard him on TV.
Anybody have a connection in the Denver schools to know somebody who could reach out to him?
Do that. Does anybody know somebody who's a teacher in DPS even, or?
Look at what Betty has to say here.
Oh, look at that.
Oh gosh, I lost her.
All right, I'll read it again. Representative Janet Buckner, Representative James Coleman, Representative Tony Exum are all on the House Education Committee. Not sure who might be on the committee next year.
Okay.
Oh, I know personally Tony Exum, and he would be excellent as a speaker.
He would be,
just as an
Paula.
aside, just as an aside.
Yeah.
What did you say, Sally?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. And I not only think he would be good, but he's a very nice man.
He's a wonderful man.
And I
Yes.
don't know him personally,
Yeah.
but certainly know of him.
Yeah, Dave and I got to know him pretty well. So
excellent, excellent.
So I can make that connection if people would like me to. But that is a good comment. Will he still be on that education board next year? I don't know how
Maybe
that
someone
works.
from the committee would be a good source for the connection to the Denver School Board. One of the people, maybe somebody knows someone on that committee, maybe that person could connect us with somebody on that would get the school board person from Denver.
Sue Biden probably has a connection to Janet Buckner.
Right.
And I would bet you any money Janet Buckner has a connection to Tay Anderson.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good, Sue.
So we might try it from that angle.
So how are we looking at doing this? Just, it's a 3-hour meeting. It's going to be, most likely some of the usual stuff where we talk about pieces of legislation, and, Betty does her dog and pony show about legislation and that. And then we have, always a few other AAUW business things. So are we talking about just having keynote speakers? Are we talking about a panel, or are we not there yet?
Betty did write down that she also knows Janet.
Oh, Betty knows Janet.
Yeah.
I would like to see part of it devoted maybe to, right now I think we're looking kind of at K through 8, K through 12, but I would like to see the higher education part addressed in some manner, especially with everything that's been going on lately with them.
I agree, Joan. I don't have any ideas, but I think that's excellent.
So we could basically split it as to, a little bit about PK-12, and then one aspect also on that which would be addressing higher ed.
The future.
I think that sounds good.
Are we devoting 3 hours to this meeting, Gail?
What's your thought? I mean, I don't know how you can do much longer than 3 hours.
You can't.
You can.
Yeah. I was wondering that's going to do our planning as to who we get to be our speakers for the webinar, essentially. One speaker or 2 speakers, and then the review of the bills.
Mm-hmm.
Because the review of the bills could take like 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it wouldn't take that long.
It won't take that long?
I don't think so. It never has.
We usually give about between 20 and 30, and then last year, they did their whole workshop, and so they had an hour.
So a half hour? Are you saying a half hour for the bills?
Yes.
And then an hour to either of the speakers?
And then we need to have a little intermission. We need to have a break.
Need a potty break.
Yeah.
It can be short, but or we can decide not to and tell people they can just come and go, which they can.
That's
on
what
a
we did at
webinar.
regional. No problem there at all.
But if we have keynote speakers, probably 45 minutes is enough because we won't have the interaction of questions and answers.
You gotta allow that.
Well, but we can
Yes,
do
we can.
that.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
You
there's
can have question and
capabilities.
answer with a webinar.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
you can do
definitely
Q&A.
capabilities
Yeah,
for that.
depending on how we
And
do
I
it.
think we should do that to make people feel more involved.
Oh, I think so.
So we're looking at, what, 2 hours, 2.5 hours?
Yeah, I think you would say 2 hours most likely for presentations.
Okay.
Betty had posted one more point. She says, maybe you get a regent. Norbert Chavez was a former representative, is running for regent from Congressional District 7.
For the higher ed portion.
The higher ed
In the
part.
higher ed, yes.
I'm going to suggest that the call of action probably needs to be longer than 5 minutes, probably at least 10.
Yes, I agree, Joan.
But I think we've got to have a panel in order to get different perspectives in. If we were talking about parents and grandparents and working parents and teachers.
You know what, Lindy? That is so hard to do on a webinar.
Well, I know.
How do you do that?
I agree. I think that's the one limitation of a webinar is a panel.
Well, then we'll just have to pivot. Remember what Kim Churches said. So for this time, we pivot. And
This is Kathy Hall, and I think you actually can do a panel. You just have to do it a little more thoughtful way, but there is the capability to do that. And again, I would suggest that you don't let the technology push you in one way, in one direction or another. If you feel a panel's the right thing, then we should work on how to do that. But I've been in a couple of Zoom meetings where they did have panels and it worked fine.
Okay.
It's a little more challenging, but it does work okay.
I love it. So
If we do
could
panels,
see,
we need to get more speakers, which makes it a little more complicated, but just a thought.
I could see the higher ed being either a panel or just a single presenter. Whereas I think that if we're going to do PK-12, we definitely would want a panel, because I think there is where you would want somebody from a school board as to, you know, the local bottom-up view versus to include someone from the state legislature, state education committee, either Senate or House, about funding. And then we also discussed, and we have not gone down that path here, about the whole parent-grandparent role. How does home life respond to online learning?
although that might be able to be addressed by one of the panelists that wouldn't just be talking directly from that perspective, but I don't know.
Betty wants to know if there's one of us on the committee that is a parent or a grandparent of a student that could speak, you know, personally about what the impact is. Sally, I hate to pick on you, but by George, it seems like you're the perfect person for that role.
Well, I have to tell you, when all of this started, the assumption was that as an ex-teacher, retired teacher, Grandma could really help with this, and I can't help at all because I do not have the technology. So I have been a total bust as far as helping with online learning. So, you know,
You know, and that's interesting. You know, my son was a freshman in high school last year, and so he was able to log on and do his work on his own, and he's a very motivated student, so he didn't require a lot of parental oversight. But it's always possible he might be willing to take part, or I could give my perspective. I know for my son, and then as I'm seeing patients and talking to other parents, there's such a discrepancy in what kids were being asked to do. I talked to one parent who's, well, it was a grandparent whose grandson lives with her. All he was asked to do was to log on. He's in DPS, log on for attendance. There was no work given. My son spent 8 to 10 hours a day on the computer 5 days a week doing work. It was a lot of, I think it's part of the problem that we're trying to address is how large the discrepancy was and what was being required. But, certainly I watched my son go through that. And I think it was not only the workload, but the isolation, the mental health component for him.
Well, and Stacy, would you, I'll help in any way I can, but I would love for somebody, they've seen an awful lot of me at Public Policy Day. I mean, to have a younger face and kind of a newer person, I would much prefer to have Stacy talking to the group. Like I said, I've done a lot of talking to this group, so.
Well, I can certainly do my best with that, and we'll see what fall semester brings too. There may be more input.
Oh, there will be new things. Yes, there will definitely be new things. But you will be up on that because you're going to have to be doing it.
Well, I love that because Stacy can talk specifically about the parent who's a working parent. Stacy is not a stay-at-home mom, so she's trying to talk about how to figure out how to balance her work life with her son's education life. To me, that's huge.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That's good. You'd be a wonderful addition, Stacy.
Well, thank you.
Where does that go in the potential agenda? We're already at 175 minutes right here.
She'd be part of the panel.
Part of the panel.
The K-12 panel.
And they would only have like,
I really like the idea of a keynote speaker, and then follow that up with a panel.
I agree, Sue.
I do too.
I don't know if I think with all the names we've thrown out, we can get somebody who can give us a perspective on both K-12 and higher education and the impact economically from legislative funding. I think we can find somebody that could do all of that. And then we have the panel where we get more personal. We have a panel that talks about how it's impacting individual lives type of thing.
Well, that frame makes sense to me. So who is this keynote speaker that has the 30,000 foot, but with great knowledge and depth?
I think she's being
Well, if you want somebody light fires, you get Tay Anderson. Because that's going to make everybody uncomfortable. And then we can all calm down and listen to the panel. But I don't know. But for instance, any one of the representatives, Janet Buckner, or any of them, could certainly do a panel, be on the panel. You have you have a representative, you have a parent, and
be a teacher.
Teacher'd be good.
If you can get if we can get a teacher, three is more than enough for a panel. So I think that would do it.
Betty says that Rachel Zenziger is on the JBC and she's running for re-election. And my guesstimate is that she's most likely going to get reelected. I think that, she's certainly, nothing's in the bag, but I think that she's got a better chance than not of getting reelected. She is on JBC. And she's what, she's from Longmont, Sally? She's up that way.
I don't know. I am not familiar with that name.
Yeah, she's in the Westminster or someplace up northwest Denver.
Would she be the educator representative or?
Yeah, she's from JBC, so she could talk about financing.
The funding,
Okay.
the funding piece.
The legislative representative.
Right.
But I wonder if somebody like that should be part of the legislative hour as opposed to the panel, if it's mainly talking about what things are like. I mean, if you've got a teacher and a parent, you're kind of talking about what COVID has looked like in the classroom.
Well, I agree, Lindy, but then everything depends on what that funding's going to be. So what happens to the
Betty
parents?
just threw out another interesting comment. The superintendent of Jeffco Schools, who has been there for 3 years and kind of took it from when the Back to Basics right-wing group was just leaving and the more traditional school board was coming back in. Jason Glass got hired as the superintendent. And the Jefferson County has really been pleased by and large with what he's done. He just announced the other day that he is leaving and he is going to Tennessee, which is his home state. And so he, in a way, doesn't have a dog in the fight because he's not going to be in Colorado anymore.
I'd rather see maybe the superintendent for Aurora.
Yeah, I'd rather stay local than
agree.
somebody that's.
He might not even be in town at that point.
Well, no, he wouldn't be.
We probably wouldn't be.
No, he wouldn't know, but it's remote, so it doesn't make any difference. He could be on the moon.
Well, that's true.
He's learning a new system.
He's somewhere else by then.
Yeah, he's leaving in September, I believe.
Well, he's leaving when they get a replacement, I think.
No one has mentioned the.
But I don't think he'd want to come talk to us. He's going to be trying to get organized in his new position.
Exactly.
No one has mentioned DPS as superintendent of schools.
Well, other than Tay Anderson.
He's on the school board.
And maybe he's not the one to.
Is there, and I don't know anything on the Western Slope, but it certainly would be cool if we could get somebody from outside the metro area. Someone from Pueblo, someone from Grand Junction.
Thank you.
No idea.
Well, that person could be a panelist.
Yeah.
What about the president from Mesa? I've heard him speak. He's pretty good.
Oh, and that would bring in higher ed?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I've heard him speak.
Oh, I haven't.
And right now, his name escapes me, but that's a possibility.
Who are you talking about?
The college president.
I don't see him fitting on the panel exactly. We don't have enough time. That's the problem.
I'd like to see a teacher on the panel.
I would too.
Yeah. I think that would be an anomaly on, if that's how you want to set the panel up, with how ordinary people who are on the ground are dealing with.
Oh, Richard Haney.
Well, teachers are certainly dealing with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Teachers,
Yeah.
parents.
Yeah, it seems like if you don't have a teacher, you're missing a really big part of this.
Yep.
So do you get a classroom teacher who is not associated with NEA or AFT, or do you get somebody who's also a classroom teacher and part of the teacher union?
Well, I don't see that that has any bearing on it.
Tim Foster is the president
Yeah,
of
Tim
Colorado.
Foster is the
Yeah.
president of Mesa.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Well, and yeah, and it's not Mesa
It's the
Colorado
university.
Mesa University.
Colorado Mesa University, yeah.
Something.
If you got somebody from AFT or NEA, you would be having somebody who is a spokesperson for the teachers, as opposed to the, but frequently.
No,
they're
I don't think we
in the
want to
classroom.
do that. I think we just, if we're going in this direction, we just have a teacher talking about, you know, what they are facing.
The challenges. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is the gal who's an AUW person forever from, is it Arvada?
Talking about, yeah.
Transgender?
No.
She's principal of the International School.
Oh, Susie, what's her?
Scoit. Susie Van Scoit?
Susie Van Scoit.
Oh, okay, okay. I
Because
mean, she's spoken to us before.
That's
And
right.
if she were to speak, she could certainly probably give us some recommendations.
Who is it?
Susie Van Scoit.
Okay, but is she a teacher?
She's a principal of the IB school in Jefferson County.
But is she currently teaching?
No.
No.
Okay, I would have a recommend then.
She hasn't taught in years.
But she might be able to give
Might
us
have
a
someone on her
recommendation.
staff.
Yeah. A teacher recommendation.
And that would be, she would be looking at middle school and high school because her school is middle and high school combined.
I'm not sure a teacher from her school would be representative. Doesn't she have, aren't those really highly motivated kids at that school?
It's, she says that she's an international baccalaureate school because her student body is so international because the community that she draws from, her home school is a middle to a lower middle class community.
Okay.
Yeah, of highly motivated kids.
Well, not necessarily, Lindy. Sometimes IB is, my IB program was, but not all of them are. IB goes into schools that are really at risk and tries to turn them around. So
Well,
I have no idea about hers, but
I think hers is a blend of both.
Because I think
Can
it's.
someone please
Yeah.
tell me her name again?
Susie Van Scoik.
V-A-N.
S, and it's capital S-K-O-Y-K or something like that. I'm not sure.
I don't remember.
S-C-O-Y-K.
Scoyk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And where is her IB program?
It's in Jeffco.
Okay.
Okay, Betty says that Susie's a longtime Lakewood member. She's at the Alameda High School in Lakewood.
Oh, Alameda High School.
But it's a middle school, high school combo.
She's no longer a member of AAUW.
Oh, really?
I don't believe.
I do know that the Littleton branch had her speak about 2 years ago.
Right.
She spoke at a convention once, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm,
Very
she
recent.
has, yeah.
Lakewood Convention.
I don't know.
Ask Betty if she's a member of the Lakewood branch.
Betty, if you know she's a member, type in, would you? Betty's listening and she just is responding via chat.
I don't think she is.
Betty doesn't think she is.
Well, that's okay.
I think she dropped out when she became principal.
Doesn't matter.
She could still be a resource, though.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And she's very supportive of AAUW.
Debbie, do you know somebody named Nita Pratt in our branch?
Yes.
She's a teacher, but I don't know her or how good she would be.
I don't know her well. I would recognize her if I saw her, but and I say hi to her, but that's it. We could certainly ask her if she, has recommendations for herself or someone else to speak.
Yeah, if the other one doesn't come through, yeah.
Do we know, does she teach at a school that is serving at-risk kids, or is it a kind of a?
I'm going to say yes because she's with Aurora Public Schools, and I'm
Yeah,
not sure
Aurora
if there's
Public
any good
Schools is
schools
full
there.
of that risk.
Yeah, I'd say every school is full of risk in Aurora.
Too close.
So I'm looking at the clock. We have about 20 minutes left. Not even that. Do we want to start winnowing this down and seeing, having different people approach different folks? Have we figured out the format as keynote versus panel, et cetera?
I think the most important thing is to decide on who we'd like to have for the keynote so that you're, not pulling somebody off the panel or putting them on or, the panel shouldn't be too hard. The keynote is probably more critical.
Does anybody have a strong feeling as to all those folks that we've thrown out as to who would be number 1 or 2 choice for a keynote?
I think Tay.
Maybe people should Google him and listen to him and see if he's, got stuff on YouTube or something that you can hear what he has to say. I don't want to.
Well, Linda, you and I have heard him on the TV, and we know he comes across as articulate on the TV.
Right.
Well, and I have not heard him. I mean, I don't, really do Denver news and stuff. But I like the idea of him maybe, making us a little uncomfortable. And because that ties into the first diversity stuff we were talking about. Maybe we need to shake up a little bit here. And not having heard him, I don't know, but just my feeling is that might not be such a bad idea for us.
Betty
says he's an effective 21-year-old.
That'd be wonderful.
He also says that he's an activist.
That's okay.
And he's going to say what he wants to say. They're not going to put him up. So
And she says better on the panel.
No, I don't think so. I think we need to be shaken up at the beginning. I'd love to see him as a keynote, shake everybody up. It would be something totally different. A young Black man addressing our group.
Addressing us.
Wonderful. I think it would be wonderful.
I have seen him just on the news also. He does shake you. I mean, it would have that effect, Georgina.
And I think we had a couple of people thought that they might be able to figure out a path to him, but nobody has a direct path to him because we're not in the 21 community of color, are we?
We're not really well connected with his group.
Do you want me as president to reach out to him?
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Great.
I'd be glad to do that. If someone can send me any information, that I would be happy to do that.
Well, I'm happy to, go to the Denver School Board site and see how one contacts him. Get that to you.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
I would like to suggest as a backup that we have Rachel Sensinger because she's on the JBC. And she could address the issues of funding.
I have no trouble with getting someone from JBC to talk about the funding as long as they're going to make it interesting, because a keynote speaker is going to have to be, and I don't have any clue how good of a presenter Rachel is.
I think an hour talking about school finance would be pretty awful.
Put everyone to sleep, right?
I just picked up a site here. Tay Anderson is bold, brash, and unapologetic about seeking change in Denver. If you go online, you go find contacts for him.
Yeah.
Okay, the other alternative, you know, if he can't do it, might be the superintendent of Aurora Public Schools. Yeah, the Rico Munn. They certainly
Rico
have
Munn, yeah.
challenges, and he could probably address them all.
Or we could get Tim Foster from Mesa State.
Right.
Could you put them on a panel together?
Excuse me, I don't think Senator Rachel should be the second choice.
I
like
agree
these-
with you.
These others are better.
Rico
I think.
would be better.
Yeah.
I think so too.
I don't think Kay Anderson can go on for an hour, you know.
No, I think you're right.
And plus it's from Denver.
We can adjust the time frame.
Well, if we have him speak for a half an hour and have questions, that's 45 minutes. So.
That's long enough. And then maybe we can give the panel a little more time. It always seems like our panels are so rushed that they don't get very much deep information. So maybe we just give that time to the panel.
We could, or even add a panelist if we had more time.
Okay, Betty says, Representative Lisa Esker from Pueblo is on the JBC and and also agree that Rachel might not be the best keynoter.
Yeah,
Okay, so scratch her off.
Take her off.
she's a smart woman, but I don't know that we
Yeah,
want
there's a difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe she could be a panel member. I think we need to get the funding aspect in.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's a good idea to think about the funding from the JBC perspective.
On the panel.
Yeah.
Time.
So for the panel, we'd have parent, funding, and
a teacher.
Teacher. And that's enough. Any more, it's unmanageable.
You're right. Yeah, I think 3 people on a panel is what you would max at.
I think this is kind of interesting about Tay. He says, my entire career has been about serving the people of Colorado. I have served in leadership roles in the Colorado Democratic Party, gun violence prevention boards, and in the Colorado House of Representatives. In the future, my plans are to follow in the footsteps of my grandmother and become a teacher at my alma mater, Manual High School.
Wow.
So he is really into the education.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's interesting, Betsy.
What?
Yeah, I have not seen him speak, but he really sounds like kind of a compelling keynote, doesn't he?
Well, you can certainly market him as you know, he's got great credentials and interesting credentials that I think that he would perk people's interest to come listen to him.
I run with you, you run with me. Now we will serve Denver Public Schools together. I am a direct product of the public school system in Denver. I have lived through the failed policies of Denver Public Schools as a student and now as an educator. I understand what it means to have to choose between lunch or a bus ticket. I am fighting to bring your voices to the Denver Public Schools. whatever, brighter future for all Denver students. So,
Okay, so I say that we pick up on Paula's offer to contact him and see if he'd be interested. And Paula, you could certainly have a conversation with him as to how long he felt comfortable doing a keynote speech, whether, 20, 30 minutes is his comfort zone with a Q&A after that or not.
I have a feeling once he gets started, you're gonna have trouble stopping him.
Yeah.
My only concern is it's all focused on Denver public schools.
Well, that we make the panel more diverse.
Right. And some of the things that apply to the Denver schools would apply to other districts as well.
Exactly.
One of the quotes he had was for the state of Colorado.
Yeah, he's been in the, yeah.
Yeah, I do think we have to be careful, Diane, you're right, in the fact that we don't want to be too metro-centric. I hear that. I know that when I was working, that was always something. So that's what I'm saying is looking, for higher ed, have Tim Foster from Grand Junction.
Definitely. Or is there a representative from the Western Slope who could speak on the trials and tribulations of the rural education programs,
Well, and Betty commented, I don't have her in front of me, that the Representative Esper from Pueblo on JBC.
Yes. Is that rural enough?
Well, it's front range, but it's certainly not Denver Metro.
Yeah, I don't think you can that much. You don't even have a branch.
Paula, if you go into Tay Anderson, it will come up. You can have his phone number, his email. You can contact him right from this site.
Okay, thank you.
He's not hiding at all.
No.
Oh, I figured he wouldn't be hiding.
I'd like to know, are we going where we are with some of the people on the educational committee? Am I still supposed to do contact with Tony Exum, or has he been eliminated?
Yeah, for the panel?
Right, for the panel. I think he's been eliminated if we're only having 3.
Yeah, to me, I'm kind of hearing that we have to have somebody from higher ed. And so are they on the panel? I kind of think so.
It'll have to be the panel at the end. So that would be higher ed, then and a teacher and
Stacy. And Stacy.
Yeah.
We can't include everything, so
No,
and it may depend on who's available.
I'm kind of thinking that's not going to be a good blend with the higher ed person, the teacher who's is probably representing more like K through 12, and the parent is representing K through 12, a little bit of higher ed, right? So maybe we need to just focus on K through 12. I don't know.
Well, the other thing is we could have a keynote speaker that would be, the longer presentation, and then have higher ed just give a 10-minute talk on higher ed. Not a keynote speaker, just a talk. And then a panel of maybe, shorter length of time. I don't know, would that work or not?
If somebody be willing to talk to us for just that amount of time, I think it would be a good idea.
I mean, that might be interesting if anybody in the audience has higher ed specific questions, they would have a set time to hear that person speak and ask some questions.
Well, we have a college university person.
She's from Mesa.
That's exactly right, from Durango, right?
Marcy Young.
Yes.
I mean, we certainly can find somebody within one of the branches to cover a 10-minute thing, talk.
Isn't she in Durango, Paula?
She is, but she's not with the university anymore.
Oh.
We have Betsy Oudenhoven is the president of Community College of Aurora.
Oh, right.
That would work.
She gave a wonderful presentation about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And maybe a little more time than 10 minutes. What if we went 3.5 hours, but we give them a longer break? Do you think that would work?
I think if you go beyond the lunch hour, you're going to lose them.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
regional went until about 12:30, didn't it, Paula?
Yes, and that's what I'm planning for fall leadership also. But that is with breaks.
Yeah, so with the break in there, I think we could go to 12:30, no longer.
Right.
But I think that would be something we could do.
If you've got good speakers, they're going to stay with you.
Yep.
Well, if you did the keynote for 45 minutes and then you did the panel for 45 minutes, then you would have time for a higher ed person also.
Right.
I think the panel needs more than 45 minutes. Who knows?
Well, you never want to give them, you always want to cut them short, so they always want more to come back.
Maybe we only need 50 minutes for the keynote
Rather than an hour, Lindy?
rather than an hour.
Good speakers really I don't think want to go.
Questions?
I don't know if some good speakers want to go 50 minutes.
No, they
Right,
don't.
we found that with national, with both Kim and Julia.
And Julia.
And we basically told them 20 minutes and 30 minutes for regional. And oh my gosh, they did really well and said what they wanted to say. And Kim felt very comfortable in that time restraint.
They don't want to speak more than that.
So I think we could go less time.
I like that.
30 minutes, 10 minutes of questions and answers. And boy, are they concise. I mean, they were unbelievable. They'd have plenty of time for higher ed.
And then there'd be time for higher ed, which really seems to me that it would more stand on its own than be part of the panel.
Right.
So for higher ed, do we want someone like Tim Foster from Mesa State? Do we want our own membership from who's higher ed relationships, who's no longer at the university in Durango, but might be well aware of what's going on? Do we want somebody from Community College of Aurora, who is right here on the Front Range?
And who is that lady that's our new college university rep, Paula?
That's Marcy. That's who Gal's talking about.
But if we got Rico, isn't he the one that's on the western slope, and that would bring in that aspect as well as the higher ed?
Rico's in Aurora.
Okay, who's the one from the western slope?
Tim Foster.
Tim Foster.
Okay, I would think that would cover two things. If he couldn't do it, then maybe go to Rico as the next one.
Rico's superintendent of Aurora Public Schools.
Yeah, he's K-12.
Okay, so
he would be on the panel maybe.
Okay, so we're with Tim Foster as a possibility for higher ed.
Right. And so we've got two possibilities for higher ed. We've got Tim Foster, who is Mesa State, and then our Aurora branch member who is at Arapahoe Community College.
No.
And I guess the decision is
Aurora, one of the colleges.
What do we want them to talk about? I think Tim Foster would talk more about the challenges of getting people there and finance, whereas the teacher would be talking more about life on the ground, doing remotely. And I guess we have to maybe decide what we want.
Still have to pick a parent.
Of course, we also have our note taker here who's teaching at higher ed, Deb. So Deb, you are, what school are you associated with?
Me, I teach at the CU Denver campus in the engineering department.
So what do you think people would be interested in
Isn't
hearing
Stacy the
about higher
parent?
ed?
Isn't
So
Stacy the parent?
I would be the parent.
Yeah.
Yes.
And who else?
And then the Katie's.
Oh, yeah.
Deb, what do you think people would be interested in hearing about higher ed? About the challenges of getting kids on campus, the challenges of online learning, funding? What do you think are the hot topics that people would be interested?
The hot topics that keep coming up at our staff meetings are how to deliver the right education in a hybrid way, opening the campus safely for some, teaching online for others. And then the second hot topic, of course, is funding and what this means for our campuses and buildings, how many teachers we can have, and then there's that side effect from when funding goes down. You also can't hire as many professors. Now you've got professors who have classes of 90. My classes for this fall are 90 students right now. And I have to do that all online. So now I have to be willing to have potentially 90 hours of meetings if each student wanted an individual meeting with me.
Wow.
It's mind-boggling, the effects. So I think I would probably want people to know most about funding and then what impacts that those funding cuts on higher ed have. And then the second thing I'd probably want them to know is how do you deliver a quality education in a hybrid learning environment, which is sort of the big challenge for colleges. It's a challenge for K-12 too.
I'm wondering what's going to happen to these students who may be on online learning for the next year or so. Are we going to have to add an extra year to get these students caught up?
Just personally on my end of things, like I'm looking at some of the younger members around me, like students who are 10, 11, 12 years old. They don't have the self-discipline or the motivation to learn on their own, and yet that's what online learning requires. And so their teachers are doing everything they can to motivate them, and like I have several teacher friends in the K-12 arena, and they're telling me that some of these students don't even get online for class. And when you call their parents, the parent says things like I was telling you before, like, well, our older students had an online class at the same time, and I only have 2 computers, but I have 4 students. And, things like that are going on left and right. I think there's the potential to leave that K-12 generation behind. And this is a time when their minds are growing so fast. K-12 is where
I'm going to have to go.
Yeah, I was just going to say we're out of time and we have not finished this. So I don't want to cut it off and leave it dangling with unfinished. So can we set another time to get together and frame this out? Or what is your thinking here?
Could we have somebody contact Tay or some of these people we've talked to and see if there's a possibility that they will be able to contribute or to be involved, and then
build a program around who we can get.
Right,
exactly. I agree. And usually in August is when we really would finalize what we were doing. So I think that would work. And I'm very sorry, but I do have to go. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.
Hello.
Bye, Sally.
So we've got Paula going to try to contact Tay Anderson. I think Deb just absolutely, pulled the rug out from quiet thinking about higher ed, because it's certainly in quiet thinking. About someone to try to contact Tim Foster and see if he can address some of these issues. And I do like Tim Foster simply because he's on the western slope.
I do too.
And I want to get off the front range from everybody. And then we've got a parent discussion, or a panel discussion. We've got a parent. We had a couple ideas about a teacher. Who had the ideas about the teacher? I don't have.
Tim Foster may have some direction as to where we should be looking too.
Well, he's going to be talking about higher ed, and I think the panel discussion is going to be PK 12.
I think Debbie should talk about higher ed. I thought that was very, just what you just said has just been very amazing.
I think, my mind has been blown already, but I don't consider myself to be well thought out on the topic, at least not yet.
Well, you've got
but by February.
Well,
yeah, I don't know about that.
Deborah, would you be willing to give it consideration? And if you can't, then we'll work with you to figure out some other way to go. But would you, give it a serious thought?
Well, I'm going to say no. I think there are people much more qualified than me. Remember, I'm a part-time professor.
Okay.
So,
and I
would think that there would be people who are much more qualified than me to talk about the effects from the bottom all the way up, from pre-kindergarten all the way up to higher ed.
Okay, so we'll work on getting somebody from that, and then we want somebody from the state legislature to talk about funding for PK-12, and I think that was a person from Colorado Springs that Paul, you and Sally both said that there was a pretty good person down in the Springs to talk to that.
Tony,
excuse me for just 1 minute. Sue and I have to leave, so somebody will have to just continue the minutes at this point.
Okay, well, we'll
we got it now. Okay, goodbye.
Deborah's posting. Thank you.
I think maybe the thing to do is to see where we are with Tay Anderson and think about it and get together in 3 weeks and talk about the panel some more.
Well, I think, Lindy, I'm kind of with you that I'm thinking that we need to get together to have another discussion.
I'm sorry, I have to leave.
I agree.
I'll come back whenever we decide to come back. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll throw out some additional dates, and maybe Sue will even be able to hook in with us full time by then. So I guess the next thing, the one concrete thing to do is to reach out to Tay Anderson and see where we can go with him. And
I will try and do that within, let's see, today's Thursday. I'll get back to you next week, Gail.
Perfect, Paula.
And you can get his information, okay, Paula?
I think I will. I'll yell out, Lindsay, if I have a problem.
Oh, here's Betty's comment. The person from Colorado Springs that's on the education committee is Tony Exum. E-X.
Right, I know Tony Exum very well.
And then there's the CCHE is higher ed. Okay, so Deb, what I don't know is how to print off these notes that you've been taking. So they're on your computer, right?
Yep. I will send them to everyone.
That's perfect.
Send an email, yeah.
Boy, this has really been great to have you do such good note taking. Between that and what Sue Bodis has been writing up for our conversation, we'll fill out from what Deb has. And Sue Ryder and I will find a couple of dates and we'll shoot back out as to some dates and times that might be good. Stacy, you're most likely one of the more challenging people to get together because you're still working. The rest of us are sitting home watching the paint dry.
Yeah, that's not true here.
Oh, yeah, right, for you too, Deb, the two of you.
Yeah.
So, shoot to me some times or dates that, you know, you never ever want us to try to get together.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, for me, I've got Thursdays off work because I work Saturdays. So I'm at work the rest of the week during the day, but I can do Saturday afternoons or possibly a Thursday.
Okay. So,
We found in planning the regional convention that 6:30 in the evening was a good time to meet.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Well, that's good news. Good news.
Paula, I think you'll agree with me, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll work with Sue Ryder and see if we can find a time at 6:30 someday that might work for her. Hopefully her husband will be getting better too, and then she'll have a little more free time to focus on this.
I've been holding meetings at 6:15, even 6 o'clock, and people have been really happy with it for that time of just having it be, you know, till 7 o'clock, whether it's the hour, 45 minutes, or 30 minutes. And I've been having a lot of Zoom meetings that way, and it's worked really well.
It really has.
I don't need to reinvent the wheel, so thank you. Okay, I think wonderful initial discussion. I think it's a huge challenge that we have in front of us, and I think we've got some really great ideas of wrapping our arms around this challenge that we have coming forward. So I'm going to let you go, and we'll be in touch.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.